Greetings, everybody. This is Mike Lyons with Healthcare Leadership Live. Thanks for joining me here on LinkedIn Live. And if you're listening to this after the fact on the podcast version, welcome also. This is a show where I share with you content that helps healthcare leaders, doctors, practice administrators, and other folks how to run their practice efficiently. And I have guests from finance, um, marketing, and other healthcare related fields. Sometimes we talk about wellness, self care. Um, but today I am solo. Unfortunately, my guest for today came down ill and was not able to join me, but I have content to share. And I want to share some stuff that is related to the topic of growth because that was our topic for today, operational growth. And so I want to talk about growth from an HR perspective and things to think about. If you are watching this live on LinkedIn, then you can comment on the LinkedIn page and ask a question. You can also share the word summary in the comments if you would like me to send you an AI generated summary of what I talk about here in this show. Would love to have your questions, would love to interact with you. That actually makes it more fun. If I could spend nothing but just answering questions, that would be ideal. But I have a ton of stuff to share. And so we're going to jump right into it. Just a little bit of background on me. My name is Mike, and I am an HR leader in the healthcare world. I do consulting for healthcare practices to help them get better results through people, and I would love to work with you if that's something that you're interested in. So let's jump in. What do you think about? What do you need to think about if you are growing your business from an HR standpoint? Well, there's a lot. There's a lot to think about, and it's actually a hazardous time. It's an exciting time, but it's a time to be thoughtful. And when you're going from kind of the startup mom and pop phase and you're getting into multiple locations or expanding to more providers, you need to have some things in mind. So, what are some of those things? Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is you've got to have leadership. You've got to have leadership. An organization can't function without effective leadership. And that means hiring a manager or multiple managers as you grow. So, when do you hire a manager? I'm going to be posting a blog post very soon about this topic, but it's important to hire before things get out of control because you need a manager to help support your employees. You need a manager who can be present for them. You need a manager who can teach them and guide them and answer their questions and support them. Because if employees don't have effective leadership, then they're not going to be engaged. They're not going to be happy. They're not going to be doing the right behaviors that you need them to do. And managers are there to facilitate that. Not that managers are needed to make people do the right thing. I'm a believer that people want to do the right thing. But the role of a manager is to help guide. So if there's a car going down the road, the manager is there to kind of keep that car in its lane and going at a good, steady speed. That's what a manager's job is, and to make sure that there's enough good quality cars on the road headed down the destination. And that's hiring, right? And that the cars are ready to hit the road. That's training and onboarding. If you don't have leaders in your business, then you as a doctor or you as a practice leader, manager, are going to be overwhelmed and burn out. I was just talking with someone earlier this week who needs another manager in their organization, and it's showing. It's showing. And I'm sure it is affecting the frontline employee experience, and it's affecting the physician productivity. And so in healthcare, it's unique. The employees are working side by side with the physician. And so if employees are not doing things right, if they're not up to speed, if you're understaffed, then the physician, which is the engine of productivity of your practice, will not be as productive as they can be. And that's a problem. That is a big problem. And so it starts with leadership. It starts with having enough smart, engaged leadership. The next thing to think about if you're when you're ready to hire a manager is you've got to hire the right person. You can't just hire any person off the street. You can't just promote the person that shows up the most. You've got to be thoughtful about who you put into a leadership role. And my recommendation is to be very careful about that. And my recommendation is to choose someone who may not be the best medical assistant, may not be the best at the front desk, but to choose someone who is the best relator. They're good at relating to their peers from a perspective of wanting excellence. You can't just have someone who wants excellence and is not good at relating, because then you get an a-hole who dominates everyone. You can't just pick someone who's a good relator, because if they don't want excellence hard enough, then they're just going to be nice and kumbaya, and they're never going to want to fix things that go wrong. So you've got to get someone who wants things done well, has high standards, but is a good relator. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're the fastest employee. It doesn't necessarily mean they're the most experienced employee. It doesn't mean they're the person that was with you from day one necessarily. Look at who has good relating skills. And usually it's pretty obvious, but the problem is you get tempted. You get tempted to go with that person who, oh, this person knows everything. They know everything about the billing. They know everything about the front desk. You know what? I'm the doctor. I kind of know the clinical stuff. So I'm going to pick that person who's great at the front desk and the billing and the admin. Well, if that person is not good at relating with high standards, then you have just set them and yourself up for failure. And I've seen that happen so many times in the beginning stages of growth, because a manager gets promoted in the early stages and then they just stay on and they stay on, and then they perpetuate that sort of not effective leadership. And the CEO or the managing partner or the doctor forgets, and that person stays in place, and they really hurt the culture, and they hurt the culture of performance as well. And then you get employee turnover and all that kind of stuff. So selecting managers is really key. I love to help with this kind of thing. I love helping to identify and promote talent. Next thing, you can't just stick that person into the role. You have to train them. You've got to teach them how to be a leader. You've got to teach them about employment law. You've got to teach them about what does it mean to be a good manager. You've got to teach them your expectations. You've got to sort of mind meld with them about what drives success in the business. You also have to listen to them, because now you're putting in a person into your org chart that is a key person, because every time you put a manager into your organization, you are putting either a filter or an amplifier into that chain. If that person is filtering and fuzzing out and blurring the noise and the information in a bad way, then you're going to be missing information. But if they're amplifying the right information, then you're getting good intelligence, you're getting good insight. And so getting on the same page with that person and making sure that they have good communication with you is important. Teaching them to relate as a manager to the employees is key. How do they get their respect? How do they make requests? How do they give praise? What does their management operating system day to day look like? Do they just show up and kind of work side by side with employees? That's not always effective. That's not always effective because they're not operating at a high enough level. That might be good at the very beginning, and it might be good maybe when onboarding someone. Work side by side. But at some point, managers get bogged down by working side by side because that's their comfort zone, and they stop and they never step back and they look at the big picture. And so, teach them how to be a manager. If you yourself have not been a manager, let's say you're a physician, got a couple doctors in an office, you've never managed people before, or maybe you kind of fumbled through it as you started your practice, but you're not a true expert. There are people that can help you. And the investment to train that manager, that new manager, will have an incredible return because that manager is key in your practice. They can cause damage or they can help you succeed. And so invest a little bit. The way I like to think about it is if you're going to buy a house, you don't just walk down to Walmart and go pick a house all by yourself. No, you get a realtor to help you guide you through the process. And there's a little bit of an investment. There's a little bit of an investment, but you can make a huge mistake without having that person. I bought a car not that long ago. I didn't have a mechanic look at it. And guess what? The car had wheel problems. The car had rust problems. The car had all these problems. And I've put more money into that car probably than what I spent on it. And a little bit of investment up front prevents you from problems later. And that's where manager training helps. So get some support. Send that manager to training. Have someone mentor them. If you're on the LinkedIn live stream, share a question. I'd love to hear it. I will answer it. And thanks for being here. As a leader, let's say you're a doctor, you're a CEO, as you grow, there's going to be more stuff on your plate. There's going to be more stuff on your plate. And you need to know what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Maybe you're great at sales, but maybe you're bad with communicating with staff. Maybe you're awesome with the software. If you're a med tech, maybe, but maybe you're not great with making people feel appreciated. Maybe you've got big visions and lots of ideas, but you're not great with focus. And all of those problems can get expounded on if you don't get help with those issues. And so find a person who can help you, either a full-time person or a fractional or a part-time person on your team. Get a fractional CFO, get a fractional marketing person, have a person mentor you with your leadership and take on the leadership and people management tasks and admin. That would be a fractional HR person. These are important things to do, and they cost a lot less than what you might think, and they're definitely less than hiring a full timer. So know your weaknesses and delegate where you can so that you can do the things that you are the best at, where you add the most value. If you're a doctor, you add the most value in seeing patients. You're the only person in the whole clinic that can see patients. Newsflash. And so the revenue of your medical practice hinges on the physicians and the providers and the nurse practitioners in the healthcare practice. And so being able to delegate the charting, the coding, the marketing, delegation is the key so that you can do the things that you're the best at. Get good at this. Get good at this. And this is where HR can also help with job descriptions, with onboarding, with creating a culture of focus, with helping people understand their roles, with performance management. Get someone who knows HR. Okay. Because if you're having to live in your weaknesses, you're not going to be successful. Next, you've got to listen to your people. During times of change, there's chaos, right? There's new products, there's pulling back from products, there's new customers, there's customers leaving, there's customers asking for new things, there are new markets you're going into, new tools, new software. If you aren't listening to your people throughout all of this change and this disruption, then and you're just kind of relying on your own infinite wisdom, then you're gonna make more mistakes than you need to. The time that you invest in listening to your people will pay off in better decisions, better employee engagement, which leads to better employee retention. And what are you looking for if you're not looking for retaining your good people and making better decisions? So listen to your people. Have regular touch points during times of change, during times of chaos, during times of disruption. You need to amp up the communication. So I was an HR leader during the height of the COVID pandemic, and it was a time of the most communication that I've ever had to do in HR because the laws were changing, the rules were changing about whether you could be at work or not, or how long you had to be out, or how far away you had to be from someone before it was a problem for you to be able to come to work or not. And so there was constant communication, and the managers had to communicate, the CEO had to communicate with the leadership team, and the leadership team had to communicate with the staff. And the staff had questions, and so it was important to have a lot of connection time with the employees to answer their questions. People have questions during times of change. You're hiring a new marketing person, new salesperson, someone got fired. We stopped this we stopped this project. We decided to expand this project. That is a very risky time because employees feel scared during times of change. Oh, you just hired a new salesperson? Well, I was doing sales. What's going to happen to my role? Do I have a new job description? Am I safe? Is someone talking to me about that? Is someone communicating with me about that? Did I know this hire was even happening? Why are we having this new software? Why is it that I hate it and no one's listening to me? Um, Customers are telling me that they feel like less supported because our support team is pulled in 20 different directions, and I can see it, but for some reason the CEO doesn't acknowledge it. These are the things that your employees are noticing, and it's a gold mine of information that you need to be tapping into. And don't miss out on that. Don't miss out on that. And so people feel unsafe in an environment of lack of information. So if you combine high change, rapid change with lack of information, you are going to hurt yourself. The people in your organization are the ones that give you your agility and your nimbleness. And if you don't engage with them during times of change, then you're missing a huge opportunity. That's where a good manager comes into play. I train managers to have a lot of touch points, communication touch points with their staff. It's incredibly helpful during times of change to communicate a lot with your staff. So that's what growth is all about. Growth is a time of change. Growth is change. It changes people's, their feelings. Maybe you're growing to the point where the manager you had in the past is not the right manager moving forward, and that person's role needs to change. That's a threatening situation. That's a threatening situation. And so communicating that effectively, taking care of that person, maybe training them for the future role that they'll be able to take on is important. Clarity is really important during times of change. And so I kind of been talking about this, but roles tend to change during growth, right? The person who was the manager of marketing might now be reporting to someone else next quarter because of the growth. We needed to hire someone who has growth experience, growth marketing experience, or maybe has experience in a national role, or, has had a different scope of experience. That's important. That's an important time to clarify roles, because then if you don't clarify roles, what you have is you have employees stepping on each other's toes. And man, do you want to lose employees or do you want to keep employees? If you want to keep them, you don't want them stepping on each other's toes and you don't want confusion. I know someone in an organization right now that's going through change. And then what organization isn't going through change, by the way? But just a new software and a new person that's working on that software is creating frustration points of communication. And so, whenever you bring a new person onto the organization, giving them clarity about what their role and what their purpose is, and what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing, and why. I was in a role at one time where the instruction was very confusing to me, but there was never any reason why. And it made the onboarding very difficult. It made the onboarding very difficult. And so when you're onboarding someone in a key role, you got to spend a lot of time with them, especially like if you're a CEO or managing partner and you're hiring a new direct report, you better spend a lot of time informing them about what the expectations are and giving them, this is why how I'm looking at this situation. This is how I want you to look at this situation. How do you see it? Oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't think about it that way, but the reason I'm looking at it like this is that. So that's kind of how my mind works. And employees want to do a good job. They want to please their leader. And so that's your opportunity to educate them and to help them understand what the expectation is. So this is where employee onboarding is important. When you hire a new employee, you don't just onboard the new employee, but you, in a way, metaphorically, I guess, have to onboard the organization to the employee. So, how do you want the organization to interface with this new person? We have a new chief revenue officer. What does that mean? What does that mean for us? How are we supposed to go to this person? How are we supposed to interact with them? You've got to line all that stuff up. You can't just put someone into a role and not explain it. And so, role clarity, not just for the person in the role, but for everyone around it. What is this person's role supposed to be? I've had role disclarity before, and it is no fun. It didn't end well. It didn't end well for anyone. If you have questions, if you're on the live stream, shoot me a question. I would love to answer it. If you like my hat, let me know. Tell me, what do you think about this hat? Is it a good looking hat? Should I keep the hat? Kind of thinking about, whether this is the right hat for me. I would love to hear your opinion about it. Believe me, on social media, I've definitely heard plenty of opinions about my hats, and I have a thick skin about it. I have a thick skin about it. As your next tip, a- build trust within your top leadership team. As you grow, there's going to be new people in your organization reporting to the CEO or the leader. You've got to build trust with that leadership team among the people in that team. That means a lot of communication. That means intentionality about how they communicate and how you communicate with them, and taking that communication seriously and being at your best. I worked in an organization where those leadership team meetings were extremely tense. And the leader was, quite frankly, a jerk, and would exhibit inappropriate behavior in front of the whole leadership team. And believe me, that was a distraction. That was a distraction to the leaders in the company. Don't do that. Don't do that. Create trust, create psychological safety between yourself and your direct reports and all of the executives together, the managers, the management team. Because if they don't trust each other, you are sunk, because you're going to have politics, you're going to have infighting, and that lack of rapport is going to eat up so much of your time as a doctor, as a CEO, that you will be hating life if you don't invest in your team's relationships. Um, You can bring someone in to help you cultivate that, to help you cultivate that. Um, a fractional HR person can sit in on those meetings and observe and give feedback and help keep those things on track and do team building. There are people that's their whole expertise is team building. As you're growing, it can be maybe tempting to get a shiny new um, toy in your toolbox. And what I mean by that is like a big, high paid leader, someone who's kicked butt, in that industry. And that's great. But sometimes those folks come with a high price tag and you can overpay. You can overpay. I don't want you to overpay because I've seen it when that happens, and it is a big headwind on the business. You're overpaying for your CEO, you're overpaying for your finance and ops leaders, you're overpaying for your HR, you're overpaying for your outsourced accounting, which you think is really a cost saver. You're overpaying. And so grow gently with that stuff. That's where fractional can come in. Part-time bookkeeper, accounting consultant. Use those people smartly, but assess and make quick decisions about if you want to expand the engagement or not. Figure out if they're going to fit, expand it, or move on. I was just talking to a CEO recently, and that's the strategy that he's wanting to employ. Make an assessment. Let's figure out if it's a fit or not. I can go from there because this person is astutely wanting to take it slow, but also smartly getting help from an HR expert and growing it as the business grows. That's a smart decision. In a growth mode, drive and hunger is super important. And not just because there's going to be long hours or whatever, but because you want someone really motivated. And this is a great opportunity for someone to grow new skills and to contribute to your business. That's a great opportunity. That's a great recruiting pitch, honestly. You can find someone who has the fundamental knowledge and abilities to hire someone hungry in your growth phase. And there are ways to figure out who's hungry. There are interview questions. There is a way of analyzing their work history, talking to their references to assess how hungry they are. That's really important because drive can take you a long way in a time of chaos. If someone has drive, that's worth a lot. That's worth a lot to your business. I'm a big fan of Patrick Lencioni's Ideal Team Player book. Please check that out. It doesn't matter if you're growing or not. It is a wonderful metaphor for how to identify an ideal hire, whether they're green, experienced, whatever. Again, I'm going to say again, if you want a summary of this talk, just comment in the LinkedIn the word summary, and I will send you an AI generated summary of this conversation. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, send me a message. It's Mike at seasoned-advice.com. Send me a message and say, hey, I want the summary of this talk. I'll send it to you, and maybe we'll have a chat. Also, another way of tapping into the hunger of your team is use your team for multiple stuff and tap into their desire to do marketing, to help you hire, to help you organize the office, help you deal with the vendors that come knocking on your door. Maybe they can do some triage of stuff like that. Tap into their knowledge and their desire to grow. And yes, compensate them for that. If they're giving you additional value, you should 100% compensate them for that. Now, it's good to have an expert work with that person and advise them, um, because there's certain things that are risky. You don't necessarily want to have a kid out of college, doing your financial forecasts and relying on that. But you can delegate stuff like that and have an expert guide them or do a review. From an HR standpoint, that's something that I've done multiple times. Is help to mentor an up and coming person with a new HR task. So, get help. Get help. A few hours a month could be enough to do that. As you grow, you've got to have better tools. You've got to have better tools. The hiring process that worked for you when you had 3 employees is not the hiring process you should be using when you have 15 employees and you're on a growth trajectory. You need to use more sophisticated technology in every area of your business as you grow so you can be more efficient and so you can manage better. So invest in the time to evaluate a better software. And there are people that can help you with this. Again, your time as a CEO, as a doctor, is best spent with patients. And because your hourly rate is way higher than what an expert would charge. And even if it's on par, the time that the expert spends solving your problem for now will solve that problem for the next year or two. And it will set you up to have smooth sailing for a year or two with that software. And so you don't have to think about it. So it's a lever that you need to be pulling so that you can spend more time doing the things that you excel at. Last tip here during growth is have a solid hiring process and make sure that that process helps you build a pipeline of talent, a future pipeline. In healthcare, if you don't have a pipeline of providers, then you're sunk because if a provider leaves your business during a growth phase, let's say you're at 2 providers, you want to go to 3, or 3, you want to go to 5, that provider is killing 30%, 20% of your business instantly. And you will not get that back until you find a new provider and that person gets up to speed. And that can easily take 1 or 2 years. It can easily take 1 or 2 years depending on your situation. And so work with a provider recruiter. Find someone who really understands you and can help you have a good pipeline. Cultivate a relationship with someone like that. And that goes for frontline staff also. Always be recruiting. Always be talking to talent. Because if you are a great place to work, you'll be on people's radar. They want to be on your radar. They don't care if you even have a job open because they will say, "Hey, when you have something, you let me know. And I want to be the first person you think of when you have a role because I know you're a great employer. And maybe, hopefully, you have some advantages over other employers. Maybe you have better management. Maybe you pay a little bit better. Maybe you have a benefit that they need. Maybe that you have flexibility that they would like. Maybe you're willing to offer them a growth opportunity. I want to double click on that. A growth opportunity that they would be interested in. Why did I double click on that? Because if you entice someone in with a growth opportunity, that means you get a couple benefits. Number one, the best people want to grow. The worst people want to just kind of punch in and punch out. Hopefully, you don't have them on your team, but the best people want to grow. So you're going to attract growth minded people, and then you're going to get someone who's not just willing, but able and desirous of taking on things that you've been struggling with. Maybe you need someone to create social media posts for your business and you don't have time for it and you don't want to pay someone $600 a month to create videos. Well, maybe you have a person at the front desk who is passionate about social media. Maybe you have someone who's great at writing who can create blog posts for you. And believe me, you want the search engines, you want the AI, the ask engines to find you. And you're going to have content for that. As someone who has been creating content for 7 months and is now seeing the benefit, you've got to be consistent and you've got to do it for a while. You've got to do it for a while. And so you're not going to have time. You're not going to have time to take away from your most productive activity to do that. So get help. Have an employee help you or outsource it. Outsourcing is a good choice, but you could also have an employee help you, or you could have an employee augmented with an expert, which I think is a very, very smart approach. That may be the ultimate growth hack. So today I've talked about a ton of stuff related to growth from a people perspective. If you want a summary, just type summary into the comments or email me at mike@seasoned-advice.com. If you want to subscribe to my newsletter, send me a message, mike@seasoned-advice.com, or go to my website. I've got a sign up link for the newsletter. It's a newsletter targeted for healthcare leaders with actionable insights about HR law, how to manage better, how to retain your employees, how to hire better, all the stuff that you should be investing in so that the hundreds of thousands of dollars you spend on payroll every year or millions is maximized. Just like having a realtor help you buy a house. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I am passionate about people and helping you get the best results that you can from the people you've got and helping those people be the best version of themselves. And ultimately, it helps your patients have the best experience possible. And then the financial results will come, they will flow from that. And so thanks for listening. Next week, I'm going to have Karen Cerezo on the live stream. She is a women's health coach who specializes in midlife phase for women, which is a phase of life that we are learning so much about and is not understood well enough. And it helps to have someone who is passionate about it, and Karen certainly is, and I'm excited to have her on to chat about it. I'm a believer that menopause is a real thing, so I need to find a man's midlife health coach. But I'm super excited to have Karen on because I think this is going to help a lot of people think about what's going on with themselves and how you can take care of yourself. And actually, I want to say this last thing is in a time of growth, you better be taking care of yourself because you're going to burn out. You're not going to have great ideas. You're not going to have great output. You're not going to have great work. You're not going to be a great leader. And so many bad outcomes are going to come from that. So take care of yourself. Just today, I had a beautiful run. I sang some songs because that is one of my deep passions. Spent some time with my son out jogging down the street. And it's a beautiful day. And man, I feel fired up and charged up. So, what is that for you? How can you leverage the things you love to do to keep yourself energized every day to be the best leader that you can be. And if you're not doing that, you are hampering yourself, I would say, by at least 33%, by a third, if not more. You can significantly change your results with how you take care of yourself. So thank you all for listening. I've got Karen Cerezo coming up on the next show. Reach out to me at mike@season-advice.com. I would love to chat with you. And this has been Healthcare Leadership Live. Thanks for joining.